Good evening, I'm John Carter. Welcome to Poland Daily. The National Bank of Poland has revealed the salaries of its employees. The director of the Central Communication and Promotions Department earns nearly 50,000 zlotys per month. That's around $12,000. The supposedly super high salaries paid at the Polish Central Bank have recently been used as a political tool to topple the bank's chairman, Adam Glapiński. Some parts of the media have been using anti-female rhetoric, suggesting that the female communication manager at NBP should not earn so much. Others are arguing that Polish Central Bank executives' earnings are smaller than their colleagues in other EU member states.
Thanks to this, we're getting closer to building better standards of openness of public life in Poland. I also want to say that the inspection of the Supreme Audit Office is taking place simultaneously. From the information I have, I can tell that this inspection is very detailed, and a short film will be published in June this year. This video will provide information on the matter. What did not appall me is the differentiation of salaries when it comes to some departments of the National Bank of Poland. Some departments responsible for the functioning of the central bank strategies and analysis are getting much lower salaries from the directors of the Communication and Promotion Department. This material is being analyzed right now. Just like I announced earlier, I filed another statement to the President of the National Bank of Poland on February 14th. In the statement, I asked if directors of the Communication Department and the directors of the Cabinet of the President of the National Bank of Poland, on the recommendation of the bank, also sit on the boards of other companies dependent of the bank.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu visited Russian President Vladimir Putin in Moscow today. Netanyahu informed Putin that Israel will continue its aggressive activity against Iran, which he sees as the greatest threat to stability and security in the region. The Russian president also accepted an invitation from the Israeli Prime Minister to Jerusalem. It's the first significant meeting between the two since the downing of a Russian spy plane in Syria in September last year, an incident which Russia blamed Israel for. Nonetheless, the head of the Israeli government is maintaining very close ties with the Russian president, which is hardly surprising given that Jews from Russia make up close to 20% of the Israeli population and hold significant power. The elections in Israel will take place at the beginning of April. The Ukrainian authorities have announced their intention to carry out an exhumation at Huta Pieniacka in Wołyń. On February 28, 1944, the Ukrainian insurgent army brutally murdered over 800 Poles. The exhumation is intended to prove that the Polish side exaggerated the number of victims. Wojciech Kosiak has more on the story.
Już jutro będziemy obchodzić 75. rocznicę.
Tomorrow marks the 75th anniversary of the genocide committed in 1944 by Ukrainian nationalists on Polish civilians in Huta Pieniacka. According to the estimations of the Polish Institute of National Remembrance, approximately 850 Poles were murdered here. The Ukrainian side does not believe this figure and plans to exhume all the victims. Ukrainian historians want to prove that the Polish side is exaggerating the number. The Ukrainian media have said that Polish historians will be invited for this process. However, Professor Krzysztof Szwagrzyk of the Polish Institute of National Remembrance denies any such invitation being received by the institution and is skeptical about what the Ukrainian side is doing. We want to take part in it. We're ready to go to Ukraine at any time, but we want the aim of the process to be finding the remains of the victims. However, I'm afraid the goals of the Ukrainian side don't give us a lot of optimism when it comes to the results of the research. The Ukrainian side has been intentionally lowering the body count of the Wołyń massacre and similar tragic events that took place in Ukraine for quite some time now. They also keep denying the fact that these massacres were committed by Ukrainians. A year ago, a memorial plaque was placed at Huta Pieniacka doing exactly that, negating the fact that it was Ukrainians who committed the slaughter at the village. Some of what was written on that plaque is simply unacceptable for us. The plaque says that the Polish Home Army soldiers brutally massacred the Germans, who then in return slaughtered slaughtered the village. If the historical agreement between our countries is to be based on plaques like this, then I'm afraid we won't have an agreement at all.
Że jeszcze długo nie dojdziemy do żadnego porozumienia.
Między Warszawą a
Since the spring of 2017, there has been a disagreement between Warsaw and Kiev over the new law in Ukraine forbidding the finding and exhumation of Polish war victims. The ban was issued after a UPA, or Ukrainian Insurgent Army statue, was taken down in Hruszowice in Poland in April 2017.
2017 roku.
The ongoing tension between India and Pakistan is continuing to escalate and is seemingly headed towards a major confrontation. The most recent incident involved the Pakistanis claiming responsibility for shooting down 2 Indian fighter jets. India and Pakistan have a long history of conflict, which severely ramped up on February the 14th when the Pakistani-based Islamist group Jaish-e-Mohammed carried out a suicide bombing in India, killing at least 42 members of the Central Reserve Police Force. Jaish-e-Mohammed's main aim is to take Kashmir from India and unite it with Pakistan in an attempt to enforce Sharia law in Pakistan and eventually rid the Indian subcontinent of Hindus and non-Muslims. The Speaker of the Senate, Stanisław Karczewski, met with the Mayor of Warsaw, Rafał Trzaskowski, today. They discussed the possibility of rebuilding the Saxon Palace in the Polish capital. Although the politicians belong to rival parties, there is a cross-party consensus on the matter. According to the historians, the Saxon Palace is not only a reminder of the beautiful side of our history, but also a sign of Polish identity.
The Saxon Palace has existed as a barrack palace since 1661 and has undergone various changes over the centuries. The palace was remodelled in 1842. Before the Second World War, it was a very famous historical landmark. After the collapse of the Warsaw Uprising in 1944, the Saxon Palace was blown up by the Germans as part of the planned destruction of Warsaw. Only parts of the central arcade remained, serving now as the tomb of the unknown soldier. There are plans to rebuild the whole palace. Both politicians who met today, the Speaker of the Senate and the Mayor of Warsaw, described the talks as being in good faith. We presented our ideas, our doubts, our views on the possibilities of the reconstruction, the rebuilding of the Saxon Palace, and agreed with the mayor that in a very short time, experts should meet to discuss the details. The most important thing is, of course, whether to rebuild the palace, what function it would have. We certainly agreed that if it were to happen, it would have to be open to functions that would serve not only Warsavians, but also Poles in general, and therefore we decided to talk about it and entrust the matter to experts. If there is a debate about the possible rebuilding of the Saxon Palace, it should be done in a completely clear and transparent manner. According to the Deputy Minister of Culture and National Heritage, it appears from archival sources that the architect, Professor Jan Zachwatowicz, wanted to rebuild the palace after the war, but didn't get permission from communist authorities. As she noted, the available documents indicate that the palace hasn't yet been rebuilt for political reasons. She added that there is full documentation of the palace that facilitates planning of the reconstruction in accordance with standards.
This reconstruction will be meticulously done according to plans, projections, and all the documentation we have, and we really have a lot. Let me say that it will be the pride of Warsaw.
The Saxon Palace served as the headquarters of the General Staff of the Polish Armed Forces before the Second World War, and the most important official Polish events took place in the square in front of it.
Thank you very much for joining us here this evening at Poland Daily. I'm John Carter. Stay tuned after the break for Poland Daily weather, followed by the business, culture, travel and the history.
Good evening, welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Overnight lows will be from 0 degrees in central Poland up to 4 degrees in the area of Szczecin, as well as in Gdańsk with clear skies over there. Also in Koszalin we won't see any rain tonight. Bydgoszcz, Katowice and Krakow will remain dry as well. And now if we look at tomorrow, we will see nice and high temperatures, especially in Zielona Góra and Katowice, 13 degrees, 14 degrees in Krakow and up to 15 in Wrocław with full sun. 10 degrees will be seen in Warsaw, also in Bydgoszcz, and the lowest temperature tonight will be 7 degrees in the area of Koszalin as well as in Olsztyn, where we are expecting some showers. This is all for tonight. Thank you.
You're watching Poland Daily Business Edition. Tonight our guest is Witold Repetowicz of Defense24. Sir, welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Let us start from the conference, the Near East conference that happened in Warsaw several days ago. I can understand that smoke already cleared and we pretty much know what happened over there.
Actually, what could be expected, this conference had no impact, no serious effect. In fact, this is a good information because this conference was meant to create an anti-Iranian front composed of Israel and Sunni Arab countries from the Arab Gulf. Such a front exists already, but it was meant to make it formal because the cooperation between Sunni Arab countries and Israel is well known to everyone who is interested in Middle East, but it is not official. And it is not official because Saudi Arabia or Emirates has no formal relations with Israel. And one of the reasons that they don't have these relations is the Palestine issue. And because Palestine was not invited to this conference, and then when it was already invited, rejected the invitation. So all this so-called Kushner plan for Palestine couldn't be, in fact, taken seriously. So this front, anti-Iranian front, was not announced officially. There was no breakthrough in Israel-Arab relations because everyone knows that these countries talk to each other. So this is not a breakthrough. Informal talk is not a breakthrough.
The major problem, seeing from the European perspective, in the Near East is a Palestinian question. And did
I don't think so.
Participants of the conference try to decouple the Palestinian question from the many other Middle Eastern problems?
I don't think this is the most important problem. Of course, Palestinian problem is one of the important problems, but much more important is the problem of the future of Syria, and especially of what will happen in northern Syria. Palestine issue has no direct impact on what is going on in Europe, and if United States, now the situation has changed a little bit, but if such scenario would happen that United States withdraw from northern Syria and Turkey is attacking the Kurds in northern Syria, so the Kurds has a lot of foreign fighters as prisoners of war. So these foreign fighters from Europe would come back to Europe, and they will make problems here just before the European elections. So this is much more important from the European point of view, because it will be a big threat, terrorist threat. And yet, even if it is not so much in the news, the war in Yemen. War in Yemen is a huge problem because there is a huge humanitarian disaster, and of course, on the other hand, it is also a business problem because some countries from Europe, like Great Britain, are selling arms to Saudi Arabia that are used to bomb children in Yemen. And and yet there are no refugees from Yemen coming to Europe because they don't have opportunity to do that. So it is neglected. But still, the disaster, the humanitarian disaster in Yemen is so huge that sooner or later it will hit back Europe.
But this is also a proxy war between Saudi Arabia and Iran.
This is a proxy war, even more than proxy war, because Saudi Arabia and Emirates are participating directly in this war with their troops. With their troops and the troops that they
trained.
The mercenaries from South America, I think. Yeah.
So let's move to the Israel and the election questions. Will any decisions regarding the Near East will be taken after the Israeli election in April?
I don't know. Actually, I don't think so. What kind of decisions?
Like what I've heard in this conference is that the plan exists, but is secret now, and they're waiting.
No, I don't think so. It is quite opposite. It is not that after the elections there will be implemented some plan or something like that. This announcement that there is any plan was meant to serve the elections. I don't believe in the Kushner plan. I don't believe that it is some breakthrough in this issue. I believe that it was announced to help Netanyahu to win the elections and to show to Israeli people that America has a plan and Netanyahu is a part of this plan, and the issue will be solved. Only they have to elect Netanyahu and Likud party. That now we can doubt, because if this happened, because the opinion polls are not very good for Netanyahu. This conference, all this conference was the part, unfortunately, was the part of Netanyahu election campaign, and it is not good that it happened in Poland, because we have nothing to do with Israeli elections. It is not our business.
That's true, but there is also, but apparently it's an issue of Israelis to deteriorate their relationships with Poland. How do you read this situation?
First of all, all responsibility for what happened is on the Israeli side, because Poland made no hostile steps against Israel, and Israel, first Netanyahu came to Poland and offended us, and also there was a lot of offensive remarks against us, and this shows only that that it is welcome in Israel to make offensive remarks against Poland, that there is a strong anti-Polish sentiment in Israel, and we must take it into account regarding our future relations, because if they don't like us, so you know, to be friends, you need the both sides should want that, yes. So there are other countries in Middle East, Arab countries, that think about Poland in positive way, and maybe we should strengthen our relations with those countries that like us, not with those that don't like us. Yes.
So there is opportunities in every mistake you can learn from it. That's the conclusion.
Yes, and yet we must remember that about close relations between Israel and Russia. There is a lot of Russian language is the second language in Israel, and of course this has a big impact. So Israel is a friend of Russia. It is necessary to
not necessarily an ally, but definitely a very close country. Sir, thank you very much for this insight. The Middle Eastern politics will influence us this way or another, and once something interesting will happen, we will ask Witold Rzepetowicz of Defense24 to clear or explain this situation to us. That was it for Poland Daily Business Edition.
Good evening, welcome to Poland Daily Weather. Tomorrow in Poland, the warmest will be the area of Wrocław with 15 degrees Celsius, 14 degrees will be seen in the area of Krakow, and 13 in Rzeszów, also in Katowice and Zielona Góra. 10 degrees we will see around Warsaw, 11 in Łódź, and the coolest will be the area of Koszalin, also the area of Olsztyn and Białystok, where some showers are expected as well. Tomorrow in Europe, the maximum temperature will be 20 degrees in Zagreb, also nice and warm in the area of Madrid, Spain 19 degrees, 17 degrees in Lisbon, and a bit cooler but still warm in London, 14 degrees also in Paris with sun and showers. The coolest tomorrow will be Moscow in Russia with 2 degrees, and also Helsinki in Finland 3 degrees Celsius. This is all for tonight. Thank you.
On today's episode of Poland Daily Culture, we are going to give you an insight into a foreign perspective living in Poland. We will be exploring their experiences and how they have absorbed certain aspects of the culture.
In today's episode, I will be talking to a lovely girl named Meha in a beautiful restaurant called Dąbrowski in Warsaw. Hello, Meha, and welcome to Poland Daily Culture.
Thank you very much, Paula.
Thank you for coming. What would be your tip for a foreigner before moving to Poland? Do you have a thing that you would recommend or to do or to think of?
I would encourage people to keep an open mind and also to travel within Poland, because people don't realize that there's more to Poland than just the cities like Krakow and Warsaw. Poland is so diverse that way. In the north you have the Baltic Sea with all the beautiful, Trójmiasto cities. In the southwest you have the Tatra Mountains, the southeast the Bieszczady, and the Mazure lakes, and there's so many different forests and lakes and sea, and there's just so much to see and explore. And I would really encourage people to not just come to Poland with a thing that, just go to Warsaw or Wrocław or Krakow, but also to discover nature in Poland.
I especially admire the mountains, I think, in Poland.
Yes, they're
Even
incredibly
in the summer,
beautiful.
They're beautiful.
Yes. Yeah.
And what would you name as your favorite thing about living here?
Well, I think my favorite thing about living in Warsaw is the access to the river. When I have some of my friends visiting me from Belgium or Germany, they are just so amazed that you have very good access to the river, even from the city center. And in summer, it's so lively with the two sides of the river, and one side where you can do barbecues and fires, and the other side where you have the pubs and bars in summer lined up.
Yeah, the Vistula
Yes, it's so relaxing, Warsaw in summer especially, and watching the kayaks floating by, and it's quite amazing. So this is, I think, personally my favorite thing about Warsaw. River and being able to enjoy the river.
And your favorite thing about living here in the country?
So in the country, I think I really enjoy the fact that women are considered equal in Polish society. So whether it's the workplace or at, I'm not really so sure about home, but definitely at the workplace. I mean, time and again, and this is not just something new for Poland. I think women have been an important part of the Polish workforce for many, many years now. And they are you can find them at senior positions, at banks, other institutions, companies, in the board of directors and so on. So I think this is a power that Poland has. Even compared to, I think, Western Europe, it's remarkable that there are so many women working in management. And I feel strong as a woman here. This is where I feel like I found my freedom. I feel like I can do what I would really like to do and not have to, follow somebody else's wishes and demands.
It makes me happy to hear that. And we were also one of the first few countries where women got the right to vote, I think.
Yes, yeah. And compare that to many Western European countries, and I think they would be ashamed of that. Yes. So Poland and women, there's really power in women in Poland for sure.
And one thing that you're maybe not so fond of in Poland?
I think increasingly maybe the rhetoric in recent times, especially for the last 3 or 4 years, it feels like sometimes people don't necessarily want to talk to each other or exchange their views, and they're just very staunchly believing in just their views. I think it's okay to have differences in opinion, but it's also important to hear other people, listen to other thoughts and opinions, whether it's in the political spectrum or the cultural
That's what
space.
I have observed as well. It's hard to have a discussion when it comes to politics.
Incredibly, I didn't feel like that 5 years back, for example. I did not have this feeling, but I don't know if it's the Warsaw feeling, but more specifically, I think in the last 3 or 4 years for me, sometimes I feel like it's better not to discuss politics with friends anymore when it was not like that before.
There's quite a few stereotypes about Poland. Do you know any, and would you agree with some of them?
I think that's normal for any country to be viewed by outsiders in certain stereotypes. For me, coming from India, if I were to talk about a stereotype, for example, I think when I told a family member that I was moving to Poland, and the first immediate reaction was, oh, it's a communist country, why would you want to move there? So people don't realize that times have changed, and they have changed drastically. So I think that's one stereotype. And
I've came across that as well, and it's a bit painful, actually. What's people's perception abroad is when I go back to Canada, sometimes people ask me if we have horses here everywhere, and I mean it's kind of a joke, but in that joke there's some truth to it too, what people think, and also people always ask me, is it very cold there?
Well, it's colder in Canada, I guess.
Yes, it is.
Definitely
in
colder.
some places it gets up to minus 30, 40.
Yes. I was shocked when I was in Canada 2 years back in winter, and I thought I was prepared because I had seen Polish winter, but it was much, much colder in Canada.
I think so too. There's also, people usually think also good things about Poles, that they're hardworking, very well educated, and I agree.
There is a truth in that, and Polish people, I think, are by nature very direct in sharing their opinions, which I think is great. It's very different from maybe the British way of thinking and being. So there's something to appreciate in how people are very direct. They can be very polite, but very direct at the same time, very kind. Sometimes when I'm using public transport and I sometimes come across or overhear conversations of other people, and they might not agree on a certain situation, and they might have a dialogue, but they talk to each other. They take out their feelings, which I think is important. You're not holding anything back, but it's never violent. So that is something good, I believe. Yes, fostering this dialogue.
You feel like there's good communication between people here in Poland?
Yes, in general, that's my observation, that people don't necessarily hide what they feel. They take it out, they express it, and expression is important, because if you keep something within yourself, it fosters or festers inside you, and then it might come out in the wrong way later on.
That's interesting. And how do you feel about Polish hospitality?
Oh, it's incredible. And what I love about a Polish Christmas dinner, the Wigilia, is that there's always a place for a guest always. There's a table set up and a chair always at the main table for a guest. And this is, for me, a true sign of Polish hospitality. There's always something for everyone. And I think this is another perception that people don't have outside of Poland about Polish people, that they are so hospitable and so kind to outsiders. The news might say something different, but just from my personal experience, I think people have been wonderful to me in Poland. And I really, really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
Yes, thank you, Paula. And
it was very interesting.
Thank you for inviting me.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we dive deep into the history of the Polish nobility. The Polish nobility makes a very interesting case, as they were more numerous and enjoy more political power than their European counterparts. They even managed to start a political system based on elective monarchy. Today, we will talk to our special guest, Jan Dąbrowski, a philosopher and a member of the Polish nobility. Poland has been wiped out of the political map for over a century, until after World War I they regained their independence. And I was wondering, what role does the Polish nobility play after World War I?
Well, formally in 1921, with the new constitution, all the aristocratic titles and all privileges were abandoned, diminished, erased from the political system.
Okay.
And this has to be mentioned because it's very important. Because then in 1935, later on, we had another constitution in April 1935, and that constitution, 4 years before the World War II, in a way returned to what was before. I mean, that was not a constitution which was expressis verbis in letters, in paragraphs, was denying the titles or the fact that someone could be a nobleman or aristocrat. No, in 35, but in 21 years, because there was this very strong socialist movement and people's movement, and the country was totally impoverished. There was famine. Your president, Theodore Roosevelt, saved I don't know how many thousands or hundreds of thousands of human beings here, because Hoover organized the food supply for reborn Poland at that time, just after the World War I.
Right.
The country was, because the country of Poland is a flat land, like you have flatlanders, flat land in America. Yes, and the armies, they were fighting. You know, on one side you had countries. You had German army and Austrian army. On the other, Russians. So until 1915 or 16, the Russian occupied or stayed, because they didn't have to occupy. It was their territory. Yes, in Warsaw, and then it was Prussian army, which was here, was in power here, but. This army were fighting and moving on the territory of Poland, and Polish soldiers were taking part in the fight in these three armies, one against another. You know, including my own father, my mother's father.
What about the financial conditions of the nobility and the aristocracy? Do they still live off of the land? Do they still keep farming, or where do their income or wealth come from?
Yes, they did, but the country was so ruined, so plundered after the Great War, the World War I, and that they didn't have economic means, and they didn't have income, because the prices for the products were so low, they dropped in the beginning of 20s with a huge inflation. There was enormous inflation, not like it was a few years ago in America. You know, it was like in Weimar, like in Germany. You know, that people were handling suitcases full of money which were worth nothing. You know, and there was a minister of nobleman, by the way, as well, Grabski, Stanisław Grabski, and he made 2 or 3 reforms. He was a very important figure, and he was prime minister at a certain time at the beginning of 20s, and he created basis for a very strong currency, Polish zloty, and Polish zloty at that time was a very strong currency, but that fact provoked the situation that the agricultural products were selling for nothing, you know, sugar, grains, you know, cattle, you know, that was going for export but for nothing, you know, and people were in the countryside were relatively poor. Not as poor as in the communist Soviet Union. No, there was no comparison. But poor in comparison with more richer and well-organized countries of Western Europe. You know. But that was due to the economic changes, to this.
Of course, it's like a big environmental change.
Yes. So for them, they had this position in the society, like aristocracy and noblemen, but they didn't have cash. They didn't have money. They didn't have possibility to invest, to be well off. You know, it didn't pay back. You know, they stayed in their handling affairs, in their manors or palaces more because of the family obligation than. Rather than because it was paying back. No, it was not. It was not a business at that time. And from both sides, because that can be interesting as well, my both grandfathers were specialized in the 2 different parts of Poland, one in Prussia, one in Russia, Russian Empire, but in the Kingdom of Poland, they were cultivating beetroot to produce sugar. Because the sugar industry, it was something new at the 19th century, and that was one of the best and giving the biggest profits branches of agriculture industry in 19th century and in the 20th. You know, so they in both families they did it because they have very good soil. You know, so they have relatively they were well off, but in the matter of fact, what grandmother was telling me, her portrait is over there, that my grandfather Szlaski and grandfather Dąbrowski told me that personally explained me that it was practically impossible to earn their lives. You know, they were just trying to keep the property, not to sell it, but it was not something which was giving you the profit, you know. So from the capitalistic point of view, it was economic nonsense, you know, because you were working 5, 10, 15 years and with no economic results.
Marshal Piłsudski had started his political career within the ranks of the socialist movement, but became more of a centrist once Poland had regained its independence. After taking power in a military coup in 1926, he decided to reach out to the nobility at a famous meeting with their representatives in the Nieshwierz castle in order to expand his power base. You were telling me that the nobility after the First World War isn't as well off as they were, but I also know that Marshal Piłsudski did put an effort into mending that relationship with the nobility. Can you tell me more about how it was carried out?
Yes, that was the famous meeting at the castle of Nieshwierz of Prince Radziwiłł, and Piłsudski there as a Naczelnik. Naczelnik is something more very specific for Polish political culture, because there was Naczelnik Kościuszko, who is a hero of United States and Poland, because he created West Point, and he was fighting for freedom of America at that time, at the time of Washington, of President Washington, and Naczelnik was Piłsudski as well, and Marshal Piłsudski. So he invited, he realized that he cannot, because he was member of Polish Socialist Party, you know, and he and his brother, they were true socialists, you know, as he had this political convictions, you know, on the socialist side. So his heart was on the left side, one can say. But he realized that Poland cannot be run and well governed if you are always against the traditional wealthy classes, you know. I mean, aristocracy and noblemen and landowners, you know, gentry. Land gentry. So because those people they had influence. Of course, they had sympathy. Mostly not directed to the left side, but Piłsudski himself was very well born from very good Lithuanian nobility, and his mother as well, Bilevichówna. So he had an easy access, and he was apparently he was a charming person, a charming interlocutor, and very easy man. So for the aristocrats and noblemen he met in Nieśwież, you know, he appeared. His new face was shown, because he had opinion of somebody who was because in the matter of fact, before the World War I, to organize money for the socialist movement, they were attacking banks and post coaches, you know, with money and gold. So from the point of view of the conservative part of Polish society at that time, he was an anarchist, you know. He was somebody dangerous. He had opinion of in these circles. He had opinion of a dangerous man, you know.
Of course. As we learned today, the Polish aristocracy played an important role in Polish history, and also they formed the backbone of Polish cultural life. That's it for today. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.
Hello and welcome to Poland Daily Travel. Once again, we are on the royal route, where we trip the light fantastic, checking out the most important sights along perhaps the most fabulous boulevard in the entire country of Poland. Yes, we'll be coming to you from the humidor room in the beautiful Raffles Europejski Hotel, newly refurbished and opened in 2017. This is one of the premier hotels not only in Poland, but in Europe itself. After leaving the Raffles Europejski, we'll head to the Royal Route, where we'll continue our walk, which started in the cathedral in the Old Town and continues today up to Nowy Świat. That is not just today, but the next several days we'll be on the Royal Route, and we'll be showing you all the ins and outs and what's important to know. It's an exciting trip. Poland Daily Travel, the best travel reporting about Warsaw that you've ever seen. Stay tuned.
So, this is the university, right? Correct.
We're coming up. I know it's university because it says Universität, which means university, right here.
Correct. That's the central section of the University of Warsaw. Altogether, it consists of 52,000 of students. So there are many buildings in the city of University of Warsaw, but that's the main section, that's the main campus, when in 1818 the university was established. Previously, right?
1818?
Correct.
Oh, I would have thought it'd be older than that.
That's exactly 201 years old at the moment. And what was first in here, right at the beginning, that was the area where Polish kings were establishing their summer residences, so to stay outside the royal castle. So there's families who will stay outside the royal castle, so when new elected king comes to the royal castle, they have a separate mansion. So the first king who was living in here was Władysław IV, the son of King Sigismund Waza III, so the one who moved from Krakow to Warsaw. Later, Jan Kazimierz was living in here, that's why we call the main palace in the University of Warsaw Kazimierzowski Palace, which till nowadays we can see in here. And also, on the left and the right, we can see two sculptures of two ladies, Athena and Urania. Urania representing wisdom, and
this is Urania here,
correct.
Yeah? And this is wisdom she represents.
She stands for wisdom, exactly.
Okay.
So we are having ancient Greek references, so something that Polish people like very much. We like to refer to ancient Roman or Greek history, and that's why right over there, there is Athena.
Let's go over here. Yeah. So this is Athena.
Athena. And she represents peace. It's a very popular Polish comparison. Whenever we do something, we do it so to bring prosperity and peace for the inhabitants of the country. So the university, the gate of the university, represents the wisdom that is supposed to bring peace for its inhabitants. Eventually, University of Warsaw turns out to be one of most important Polish universities that's located right in the city center of Warsaw, next to the Royal Route. That's why we are having more and more students from all around the world. You can study in foreign languages, and it's a very comfortable place just to grow up. Mm-hmm. You are right next to the Holy Cross Church. You are right next to Nikolai Copernicus sculpture, so the guy who said the Earth planet goes around the sun. You are right next to very nice places just to hang out with your friends, people and mates that you will know till the end of your life. So that's why Warsawians and people all around the world just love this place.
Okay, Poland Daily Travel. We're at Warsaw University. Let's go in and walk around. What do you say, Arthur?
I agree.
Let's go look around. Okay, come on.
You know, let's hit more spots, I think.
Yeah. So here is the Chopin memorial and his actual heart. This says here in Polish, the English translation, here rests the heart of Frédéric Chopin. And not only, there's another famous artist's heart resting here that we're going to talk about in a second. But how did this come to pass? And Why did they put his heart in this particular church?
We are in a very important church indeed. This is the church where King Sobieski prayed before an expedition to the city of Vienna. This is where Polish dignitaries were praying, were getting their marriages. And also, Frédéric Chopin wanted his heart to come back to Warsaw. He was saying very frequently after he emigrated, where your treasure is, there your heart should be. He had a plan. He wanted his entire body to be transported back to Warsaw after he dies in Paris, eventually on 17th of October of 1849. And he wrote a letter to his older sister Ludwika to bring his body back to Poland to be buried in here, but Poland was still part of Russia, so Tsar of Russia would have to agree. He wouldn't. So then he said, okay, so bring my heart back to Warsaw.
The Tsar would not agree to have the body of Chopin.
There was no such possibility. His parents, his sisters are buried in here, but Frédéric Chopin's body is in Père Lachaise cemetery in Paris. And then we are having his heart in here, put in a jar, poured with French Bourbon, put in a steel tomb and transported back to Warsaw by his older sister Ludwika. So to cross the borders, he was holding the entire box in between her breasts. That was her strategy to bring...
She had the box between her breasts?
Correct.
So nobody would suspect to look there?
Nobody would
dare to look there.
Exactly. First, his body was located in a Chapsky Palace that's right next to this place where Frédéric Chopin family lived, where he lived before he emigrated. It became like a little altar for Warsawians to spend some time next to Frédéric Chopin, and then the heart was transported and buried in the column of the Holy Cross Church. The church was destroyed during World War II, so we took it out, we checked it if it could belong to a 40-year-old man, and medical experiments confirmed this theory. And yes, we are having Frédéric Chopin heart in here in the Holy Cross Church, and also a heart of one more very important person.
Are we going to talk about who that is?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, stay tuned. Poland Daily Travel, we're in the Holy Cross Church, and this is the resting place of the heart of Poland's greatest cultural hero, Frédéric Chopin. Stay with us. Be right back.